Hope you are safe from tonight's weather conditions. I hear that those of you more coastal don't have much at all. It's just beginning to mix in here pretty good, but a happy new year to you. It's good to see some familiar names and some familiar faces, and also some new names and some new faces. So those I haven't talked to in a little while. It's good to be back in your company, and I hope through the course of the evening I get to know a few of you who I haven't met before. So I'm Jordan Sheff. I'm the commissioner at the Department of Developmental Services, and this is an opportunity for us, hopefully, to hear from you in a discussion around what the department is trying to do moving forward to create opportunities within the system we haven't previously had, to extend services to more people in different ways, to meet the needs of people where they're at. And it's a historical time for us. For me, I hope a once in a lifetime opportunity that comes on the heels of a pandemic and the funding associated with that was awarded to us through the federal government to, in their words, to innovate and promote change and transformation. And so we're engaging with all of you this evening to do just that. And no better time than right now in January, time of renewal, and now creeping into late January, getting ready for spring and the renewal that comes with that as well. So I'm going to turn it over in a few minutes. For those of you who haven't been familiarized with some of the work we're already doing, Deputy Commissioner Elisa Villardo is on the call with us tonight, and she's going to give a high-level overview. We have a lot of different stakeholders. Tonight is geared towards families, and we have our partners from CT Family Support Network. They are on the call, as well as our ombudsperson, Shannon Giacovino. We have public staff operating our public programs, as well as representation from Southbury, and regional staff. Regional Director Shannon O'Brien is on the call with us as well. Patricia West, Regional Director of Public, and I'm going to miss some names. But one of the things that'll happen tonight is we're hoping to focus on sort of DDS broader issues in terms of what the system might look like going forward with the opportunity we have in front of us. You may take the opportunity when we open this for conversation to talk. You may have some specific concerns, and please don't take offense if I suggest that we will follow up with you. We have a lot of staff on the call. My Chief of Staff, Katie Rock Burns, is with us as well. And my new Executive Secretary, Gunnar, as well as our Legislative Liaison, Kevin. So as those concerns come up, I promise you, while they're important to us, those conversations may be better addressed in a smaller group, based on some of these meetings we had. We had over 100 people register for tonight. I think we only have about 40. Oh, it's looking like 55 people on right now, and we may, before the evening's over, get in that area of 100. I've done this for providers as well, and Mike Menard from the Litchfield ARC is on here, and there may be other providers as well on the call tonight. But I've done this for both providers, for staff, and had well over 100 staff attend, or around 100 staff attend just recently, to bring them up to speed. Many of them you might know. So we're very excited to be with you tonight and to take this opportunity to hear from you, your thoughts on some of the information Elise is about to provide an overview. There's just a couple housekeeping notes. If you're uncomfortable coming off camera or using your voice, or you may be home with your loved one at the moment and there may be some distraction, feel free to use the chat. I'll have staff assisting me with monitoring the chat, although we would love to see your face and hear your voice and hear directly from you. I'm not sure if we have self-advocates or individuals supported on the call tonight. We have previously. But if you are a person eligible for supports for the department and you have something to say, we really encourage you to come on and speak. You're maybe the most important voice I hear from in all of this process. So nothing about us without us is the self-advocate coordinator's motto, and I tend to hear from as many as we can. So without further ado, thank you for this opportunity, and I turn it over to Elisa Villardo.
Thank you, Commissioner. Welcome, everyone. We're so excited to have the opportunity to gather with you here this evening. I am going to provide an overview of the various ARPA initiatives. This will be a high-level overview. There is a lot of detailed information. If you go to our website and under the left-hand gray column, you'll see ARPA initiatives. There's a ton of information. There's minutes to meetings, there's recordings. There's a lot of information there. So I'll keep it short here, but we wanted to make sure everyone has an overview of the basics before we dive into our conversation this evening. So the DDS ARPA spending plan funds a number of initiatives that are designed to strengthen and enhance our service system. And there's a number of initiatives that I'll touch upon. And the first is one that I think is important to all of us, and that is strengthening and stabilizing the provider network. We know that workforce stability has been a real challenge. We know for those who have services with private providers or those that self-direct, that recruiting and retaining staff has been a major issue for a long time, but significantly over the last few years. And so the initiative to stabilize the provider network has built-in payments to providers that are designed to recruit new staff where there are vacancies, and just as important, to retain those quality staff that are in place. And so there have been 2 payments that have been made at this point, and we're hoping to see some of the impact of those payments with stability in the workforce. The next area is expansion and integration of the use of assistive technology. Another area that has just exploded over the last few years has been the use of assistive technology. There's new technology coming out all of the time, and within DDS, we have seen people take advantage of that. We have had a number of notices of opportunity over the last few years where individuals, families, or individuals supported by providers are able to access technology and evaluations and support around how to use that technology. There are 2 current notices of opportunities that are out right now, available to individuals and families, and a second that's available to people receiving supports through providers. And we expect that there will be some additional opportunities in this area, particularly around accessing evaluations to identify what technology can be most beneficial. For those who self-direct, and we had a wonderful forum yesterday on self-direction, we have enhanced the employment platform that is in place. Rewarding Work is the platform that has been in place. They are going to be significantly enhancing their electronic platform so that people who hire their own staff have the ability to access people through that platform. There are other platforms that are available, but Rewarding Work is really going to significantly expand what they offer. In addition, there is an initiative around improving the role and the responsibilities of the fiscal intermediaries. There's another initiative around expanding supportive housing. For those of you who have participated in some of the 4th Tuesday forums, there are recordings on our website. Also under on the right-hand side of the website under 4th Tuesday forums, wonderful forum was held on supportive housing. And one of the ARPA initiatives is around expanding opportunities for people who would like to live in that type of setting. We've had supportive housing developments. As the commissioner mentioned, we have one of our providers who just recently opened a supportive housing development in Torrington, on the call with us today. But we're also looking at supportive housing that is not a ground up development, but within existing complexes. There are a number of initiatives that relate to strengthening the quality of supports within our DDS systems. And some of the areas that we're looking at include a review of the universal assessment. We're exploring options to expand our case management system with increased capacity within our electronic system. We're also looking at ways that we can improve and expand the data that we collect around critical incident management. Some of you may have participated in the NCI process, National Core Indicators, and we are looking to expand our use of the data that we capture through NCI. And finally, we are exploring the feasibility of outcome-based or incentive payments to providers. And then finally, last but certainly not least, one of the major initiatives that is well underway is what we're calling our Moving On plan. And that is a plan that's designed to support system transformation. This is where individuals and their teams will have the opportunity to look at redefining how they live and work in their communities. And the Moving On plan encourages people to consider integrating new types of supports to allow them to be more independent. We've provided planning tools to providers. We've had almost 24 providers that have expressed interest in providing a transformation plan. We're in what we are looking at as phase 1. Phase 2 will happen starting in March of this year. But the actual conversations about what this will look like will happen at the team level. So how are we going about all of this? This is a massive, these initiatives are pretty massive and extend greatly across many aspects of our service system. We have a team internally that we've hired, our ARPA team. Peter Mason, our previous deputy commissioner, has come back to lead the ARPA team. And we have 2 staff members that are working with him, Greg McMahon and Keith Lavalette. And so they're working across all of these initiatives and with different stakeholders on each of these initiatives. We've also hired 2 consulting companies that are helping us with getting this work done. One is working on the project plan around that Moving On initiative, and then the other is working around our communication strategies to make sure that we're communicating with all stakeholders and that this information is getting out and that people have a voice. We also have a number of stakeholder committees that have been formed and meet regularly and have been meeting regularly for months. And committee members, some of you may be on some of these committees. Families are represented, individuals, DDS staff, providers. And the various committees include an overall advisory committee on transformational work. Then we have a committee that's specific to day transformation, one that's specific to residential transformation, one that is focused on engaging DDS staff in these ARPA initiatives, making sure our DDS staff are aware and informed on these initiatives, and then one that is designed specifically around individual and family engagement. And I think our BUDS person, Shannon Jacobino, is on this call, and she co-chairs the Individual and Family Engagement Committee. So these committees have been working hard and have been providing feedback over the past several months, and we absolutely are looking forward to hearing recommendations from these committees and learning from their recommendations about how we move forward. So that gives you a very, very high-level overview of the various ARPA initiatives. We are very much looking forward to hearing from you tonight, hearing feedback in terms of how we can make these projects successful, areas that we can strengthen, or any other feedback that you might have. And so with that, we'll open the floor for questions and look forward to conversation.
And I'm looking forward to that. The first, I left out, looking at my notes, a couple things I had meant to mention in the original overview. I don't want anyone to think we're taking anything away. This isn't a call to eliminate group homes or to reduce services. This isn't a call to replace staff with technology. This is an opportunity for us to really look at the whole system that we operate, how we make it more person-centered, how we deliver better outcomes within our existing resources, and how we may do better by individuals with a different array, a broader continuum of supports. So with that, please feel free. Kevin, there's a raise hand function? Do you want to talk through any of that for people not familiar with Zoom?
Sure. People can raise their hand on the bottom under reactions button. There's a raise hand function. Also, I don't see anyone on the call, but if someone's on the phone, I believe it's *6 to raise their hand, but I could be wrong. So I'm going to turn this piece over to Gunnar. So
yeah, Gunnar's going to help with that. So feel free to drop things in the chat. The other thing I'll tell you is sometimes in an environment like this with, a bunch of people you might know some of and others you don't know at all. If you don't have thoughts you wish to share during the meeting, but something occurs to you that you want to mention, my email and emails of staff who are participating tonight will make available to all of you when we send out additional information, and feel free to fire away questions directly to us and we'll do our best to respond to them. Being mindful of the fact that we are in the middle of what's looking to be a very busy legislative season, and a number of the staff who are on the call have to support DDS's efforts at the Capitol this spring. So, but we plan to be as responsive as we can. So I see that Cynthia Cogswell has her hand up. If you can unmute yourself and chat with us, that'd be great.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having this forum tonight. I'm really excited to be here. I just had a question on my mind already. I don't even know if it's the appropriate place to ask this question, but I'm a peer support specialist with Beacon Health Options, and we work with DCF-related families. And I have a couple of families whose child is about to turn 18, and we're hoping to get a case manager or something that will. These are low-income families that are really struggling to get care for their child on different levels. And two that I know of are wondering what will happen if I don't go for guardianship and my child turns 18. Who will be responsible for his care, and could he potentially enter a residential place?
Thanks, Cynthia. So there is a difficult period between 18 and 21, or in some cases 22 right now, for youth transitioning to adult services, and there's no guarantee. It's not an entitlement at DDS, so we do have a wait list for different types of supports, although the legislature and the administration have granted us caseload growth for funding for day programs going forward. Getting a case manager, we are now probably at the highest level of case management staff we've had in all my years at DDS, which is great. We do not have the amount of staff and transition advisors where we can get to youth in schools as early as we'd like. But we are involved with some, depending on the nature of their disability and the challenges. We are in touch with some of those families. So we have a helpline, it's a regional helpline, which can assist you may be familiar with. And for a lot of families, that's the start of services with us. And then we looked for people who are getting funding and moving into, who have an annualized service, moving them to permanent caseloads, permanent case manager off of helpline as they age into services. But it would depend where they are, which office it is, the number of case managers that are available, and the like. So I don't have specifics for your individual case, but a staff that works with Elisa, I don't think Tammy's on the call tonight, assists with a lot of our youth services, and we can make sure we get information to you directly, and for all of Beacon. I don't know if you've met her, but she works a lot with our children that are involved at Beacon now. And there was another part of your question that I'm forgetting. Oh, talked about
about
guardianship.
residential.
So let me talk real quick about guardianship. There is a movement afoot nationally, and a high amount of interest locally about expanding the alternatives, not eliminating guardianship, but expanding the alternatives to the way we help support people with depending on the individual, their needs, the family's issues. So in different states, it's handled differently. Shannon Giacovino, who's our ombudsperson, has been really looking at this pretty passionately from a person-centered perspective around what those alternatives might be. And so there was some talk last year and maybe the year before about bringing to Connecticut an additional option beyond guardianship, limited guardianship, and conservatorship. And Shannon, I'm going to forget what I want to say. What is the phrase?
Supported decision-making.
Thank you, Shannon. I'm glad you're here. Supported decision-making. That would not have come to me for like another hour, Cynthia. So supported decision-making is a model of guardianship, a model of supporting somebody that doesn't need to involve removing someone's individual rights and to be guardian of their own right, but still allows for a team and a person-centered approach to helping with decision-making. And so I don't know exactly when that will come to Connecticut in the land of steady habits, but I can tell you, having worked in half of the New England states, Connecticut, there's almost a presumption in many regards that families should take guardianship, and that judges in the probate system very routinely do that. And if you look at the statistics, and we can try and find those for you, in Connecticut and in Massachusetts and Rhode Island, it looks different than here, and it looks very different, the percentage of people who are conserved or have court appointed or family guardians. So it's a very interesting conversation. And one, if you have interest in, we probably have interest in hearing from you and your perspective, especially as you're working with youth coming of age who want typical coming of age expectations. So there are certainly cases for individuals where guardianship is the most appropriate approach to supporting that person over their lifetime. And then there are other people where maybe that is not the approach. And a fair number of people we support don't have a guardian. And that's, you know, or assistance in making decisions because they have capability and capacity to do that. Residential is a whole other ball of wax, and there is not typically residential supports available right out of the gate. We have a waiting list for certain types of supports, although there are some residential supports we are looking. Our partners from CT Family Support Network are helping us in the chat with providing information. So one of the helpline numbers just got dropped in there. I think that was from CTFSN helping us tonight. There are ways to assist people getting supports in their homes, similar to what you provide at Beacon through a program at DSS called CFC, Connecticut First Family Choice. Oh, CFC, it's CFC. But it's not for all the same types of supports and services they may have been getting through Beacon. And then there are other services also available depending on the individual, but the helpline is probably the best place to start. And if you have specific questions, we have people who can help. Thank you.
So
Thank you.
Commissioner, we don't have any hands up in the queue yet, but Nina Nagy placed a comment in the chat. She says it would be very helpful to have a parents directory for those who wish to be on an open email list for mutual sharing and support. Is this something DDS can assist with?
It's a good question, Nina. I know that a lot of people network through, and Win Everett was registered tonight from the ARC. I don't know if he or any of his staff are on. CT Family Support Network, who is on the call, really helps parents come together to talk and to network as well. There are also DDS Families First, is another organization of network parents, and there are a number of other organizations too. I don't know that we are in a position to share. It would have to be a voluntary thing, and I'm sure that's what you would expect. For people to opt into some sort of mailing list, but I don't have a way to share a family directory without breaking HIPAA rules, and identifying information to people about who they are and how they're involved with us. But it's something worth discussing more, and maybe our partners, maybe there's ways to make that happen.
I would just add, if people are interested in being on our DDS mailing list, if you go to our website and scroll down to the bottom, you can sign up. We're looking really to strengthen our distribution list by email so that we can communicate information by email. And so I encourage you to do that if you're interested in receiving information from DDS.
Elisa, I'm actually going to interrupt you. It's actually right on the top of our website in the gray box, and I will drop the link in the chat for those who want to register. It's under subscribe for e-updates. It moved. We moved it up closer to the top.
And Adriana just dropped a link in there for this opt-in subscription. She's on a roll tonight. Joel, I see your hand up.
Yes, hi. Good evening. I'm Joel Hirschfield. I live in Simsbury, and I have a 27-year-old daughter with autism. And I'm just wondering, I know Elisa mentioned, I haven't been looking at your website for the residential housing options, but I don't know if there's maybe some highlights that you can touch upon briefly.
So just for a point of clarification, our services, the autism spectrum ASD services used to be provided through the department, and they're now supported if people only have a diagnosis of ASD.
No, my daughter has both.
Okay. So there are, right now we have 2 or 3 actually open and online supported housing places. One of them very near you, Favar,
Oh, sure.
in Canton, and they have a second in the works. Hark has one in the works in Hartford, which isn't that far from you, and
Sure.
they're scattered across the state from the southeast corner to the northwest corner. In fact, they did groundbreaking at the Litchfield Arc, and Mike Menard is on the call if you want a provider perspective on how those are working. I can tell you from the handful of people I know supported in them, they're loving it. And I think if you talk to Steve at Favar, the energy that pours out of him when he talks about the excitement in what they're doing. For those not familiar with them, we in the end of the Malloy administration were eligible for subsidized housing rounds that where providers and a development corporation partnered in creating housing opportunities with certain limits on the number of people in a building that would be eligible for supports and services through DDS. It took a while to get going. The initial rounds of funding were aimed at people both with IDD as well as autism. There is not one specifically up and running around autism, although that's a conversation we have with our partners at DSS. The funding for the housing is permanent. It's part of the developer's commitment that they make those affordable housing through the lifetime of the facility, the building. And they work in several different ways. We score that we don't. Department of Housing and the feds score the applications by the Development Corporation based on a number of factors that include use of technology, access to commerce, access to public transportation, a whole bunch of other factors, and those are scored. And we continue to see rounds of those, and there is ARPA work being done around that. But Elisa will have a little more specifics, and if Michael wants to come on and share a little provider perspective on how it's working for families at the Litchfield Arc in preparation for its eventual opening, that would be a valuable voice, because it wouldn't be a DDS voice if he's so inclined. But Elisa, I'll let you go first, and then we'll see if Michael's willing to chat.
I think you described it pretty well, Commissioner. So we have a number of these settings across the state. We have a number more, I think 8 or 9 more that are in the works, that are in development. And then we have several more that are in the application stage. So this is an area that's really been well received and has really met a need for a number of people. I mentioned in my opening remarks that we're looking at expanding supportive housing options to expand from those that are developed from the ground up that can take several years, to looking at some existing complexes that are in place. Same philosophy, still using the rental assistance vouchers, but looking at existing complexes. But I think I'd love to turn it over to Michael, because I think you can give a really good sense of how things have worked at Riverfront. So thank you.
Sure, happy to jump in, Elisa. Commissioner, post-COVID, things move quickly, so we've actually been in the building for several months now. So
That's crazy. Great.
It is crazy great, and we're excited. I mean, it has been we're unashamed labor of love for our team. We've worked in close partnership with our colleagues, with Shannon O'Brien and our West Region colleagues as well. But it's life-changing for the individuals who moved in. It's absolutely transformational. And I used to be jealous of Steve Morris's enthusiasm and joy over the project, but we have our own enthusiasm and joy in West Region now. So they're a great model. And I could not say enough good things about the way that families have embraced the model, and the individuals they're thriving. They're just, and we even have a continued trajectory for individuals who were in Project Search and are now living on their own, 3 of them in Riverfront. So it is a wonderful model. I'd love to see a lot more of those. And I'm working with the Deputy Commissioner, several of us are, to sort of just get our bearings a little bit and provide a support to our colleagues around the state as they try to get similar projects up off the ground. And I would say we've all agreed to make ourselves available as resources to anybody who has interest. So I'm happy to answer questions offline for anybody who might have any.
Thank you, Michael. And I'll tell you, at least a couple of the individuals who I've talked to would gladly show off where they're living. If you were a family who had questions around that, they couldn't be more excited about their new digs and what it means to them. Just a little more description. In each of these settings, individuals, there's access to 24-hour care without there necessarily being 24-hour care in each of the units, but it's available and on-site, and there's other additional features. And again, as I mentioned earlier, just to reiterate, this isn't in lieu of group homes. It's an option for people who may need access to 24-hour care, but may not need constant 24-hour care the way that's traditionally been provided in group homes across the state. Then we have a number of people, for various reasons, who've ended up in living in group homes, who may be looking, who've learned a lot, or who maybe had never really wanted to live in a group home under that type of supervision. This may be opportunities for them. And there may be people who have independent living situations, but feel just slightly undersupported from where they'd like to be, where this gives them a little more wraparound sort of approach to their supports and services, and some intentional community towards it, without it being segregated from individuals without disability. We'll put Mike's email. So we have all your email addresses. Staff will make sure that you have, as these offers have been made, that you have Michael's contact, that you have the sign up for the listserv, that you get push notifications from us in a variety of ways, because we're also using social media. If your inbox is like my inbox, it's a vast wilderness, and a constant stream of messages from us may get lost in there. So there's a couple other ways that you can access information without have to actually go digging through the website. So thank you for that. Was that
Right.
helpful, Joel, to hear a little bit more about that housing program?
Yes, I saw someone in the chat said, how many years do you have to be on the waiting list? That was my question too.
So, well, one of the things that we consider is that because they're much less costly services, and we haven't, for those of you who sat through the IP, we ask you what types of services you're looking for and when are you looking for them. It was something we added to the IP process so we could have a better understanding of our wait list. And that was successful advocacy from one of our groups to push for that to be amended in the IP, and we have found it valuable. If you've indicated to your case manager you're waiting for a group home, we're probably not going to call you on that. But if you indicated to your case manager, this is an opportunity, we don't want those there to be vacancies in those apartment programs that we're constituting. It doesn't serve the developer well, and it doesn't show a successful model that we want to replicate further. So there are some people who have moved for various reasons in there who had been on the waiting list, and other people have moved in there who had already got some services, but maybe not quite the right services. So with that being said, there are some things that we are lending more latitude to the Pratt teams in the regions. And if that's something you have some interest in, then I would look to your case manager to see if she can update that. We have a database where that information is stored, and that she'll elevate that to the regional staff who are assisting with these developments. And that may be something that you might wait for less. It's one of the reasons we're trying to broaden the continuum, because if everyone's waiting for a group home, everyone's going to be waiting a long time. So if there are if there's other things on the menu that are available, then we'd like to consider addressing that.
I would just add to that, each time a development has opened in a particular area, the region is forwarding quite a few referrals. We're looking for referrals. We just recently had a development open up in West Hartford, and we were actually reaching out looking for referrals. So if there is an interest, I just second the commissioner's recommendation. Make sure your case manager is aware so that when there is an opportunity in your area, they're able to put that forward. And I saw that our ombudsperson, Shannon Jacobino, put in the chat that there's information on the Fourth Tuesday forums on our website. We can talk about this. Each time I talk about something like the supportive housing, and as well as Michael spoke on how transformational it's been, that's helpful. But in those forums, it's individuals who are living in those settings and their families that are talking about those services. And I think it's a whole other level of understanding. So if you're interested in any of the different options that we talk about today, I encourage you to look at the videos of those forums, because you'll hear directly from individuals and families.
Thanks very much.
Cynthia, before we come back to you, unless it's specifically related to that, we have a little buildup in the chat. We'll go through that and we'll come back to you in a minute. Gunnar, do you want to help me with the chat?
Yep, Jordan. So the first question comes from Lee. Lee says, I have a son with ADS who just graduated from high school. Can you give us some examples how to engage with DDS sponsored programs and what kinds of help we can expect?
So thanks, Gunnar. Lee, so again, depending on the eligibility criteria, there's two different ways that can go. If he's got IDD and autism, then you are absolutely in the right place. If he just has autism, you're still in the right place. We want to talk to you. Governor and I would prefer there be no wrong door. So if this is the best place for you to get information, then we're glad you're here. Your case manager, and we put a lot on them, is your best bet to help inform. And if you don't have one assigned yet, our helpline staff are there to assist on all of those things. if you're not getting calls back or you're not getting a response, and you email me or my team directly, we will make sure that someone gets back to you to help you navigate it. You know, I joke about this when I say it in public settings. Connecticut, if it could make money making things complicated, would be the richest state in the world. We don't intend to make it complicated, but we just have a natural ability here to make things really complex. And so for families who are trying to support a loved one, work a job, maintain a life, then having to navigate our system, we understand the pain and the challenges that are there. And we understand that by the end of the day, sometimes you just don't have the energy, the focus, or the want to go digging through our website to figure things out. But we are here to help, and we will make sure that someone responds to you, Lee. I don't think I answered your question specifically, other than to say we can help talk you through that. And if no one calls you back, you email Shannon Giacovino, and 100% guarantee you she'll get back to you. And I'll also tell you, as Adriana, who's been on fire tonight, helping us out with information in the chat, we thank you. We help fund CT Family Support Network to help families network together, and they pull groups together all across the state. I see Wynn Everett has joined the call from the ARC. They're there to help and to advocate for you as well, and we'll make sure you have those contact numbers. If I didn't answer your question, Lee, specifically, if you could ask a little more specifically, we will try and respond a little better. Gunnar?
Yep. So the next question comes from Pamela Liming, and Allison Jacobson agrees with this. When will more housing opportunities be available in the Danbury area?
So the governor and I spoke prior to his decision to consider me for reappointment just recently. Commissioner Mascara Bruno in Department of Housing and delegations, state delegations, legislators from around the state are painfully aware that there's a need for affordable housing in several parts of the state where we have not been able to get it. You know, from Lower Fairfield up through Danbury and even a little north, affordable housing it's not easy anywhere in the state. For those of you not familiar with some of the Hartford rents right now, they're unbelievable for not always very fantastic living conditions. But we want to make sure that these types of housing, supported housing developments, are available in every county, if not more so. So Lisa, do you know about any particular developments that we're free to talk about west?
I do know that I said that there are certain things that are in process, and then there are certain projects that are in application stages. There is some interest in the Danbury area. So that process takes some time, but I know that there has been some interest in the Danbury area.
There has been interest in Danbury, Orange, Trumbull. I'm missing some Watertown. So there's interest pretty broadly.
When I say interest, I mean interest from developers, and so that the process is several months and requires review, and so we should hear, I think, in the spring whether there will be a development in the Danbury area.
So the one thing I will mention is ordinances and zoning around affordable housing are controlled locally in the state. We would proliferate this type of housing in every town if we could, because everybody wants to live near mom and dad or sister and brother. If those are not, if there's not a lot of affordable housing in your area, while I would like to help you, there may be conditions locally to you that prevent it. Some towns have changed and realize that there's a lot of value in a diverse community and are willing to consider different situations. But we've actually heard from, and I won't call anybody out, but certain delegations who are willing to do it for elderly and veterans, but they don't want any other affordable housing. And I'm not throwing anybody under the bus, but if you don't know in the areas that I see them popping up on the chat, you may want to check locally to find out if your your town council, your mayor, and your representatives and senators at the legislature, what their thoughts are in terms of affordable housing in your neck of the woods. But as quickly as we can bring that type of concept to as many places as we could, we will. They take a while, although Michael says he did that at breakneck speed. I think some of them have taken a year to a year and a half by the time the developer engages and fights through zoning and gets the housing rounds. But others, the groundbreaking at ARC Eastern CT out in the New London, Norwich, Groton area happened pretty quick once they got the go ahead. So I'm here to give hope tonight, but be hopeful and optimistic that things can change. And if it's not right there, we heard from a young woman recently, the type of supports she needs were almost 40 minutes away from where her parents live, because she needs a specific type of support in her life. And she's hoping that we can replicate something closer to home, because if you're relying on public transportation, what's a 40-minute drive is 2 hours on a bus or more. And if you're uncertain about how to do that, it gets even harder.
So Jordan, I think we did cover the rest of the comments and questions in the chat. Cynthia, if you want to go ahead and unmute, you can go ahead and ask your question.
Thanks, Gunnar.
I just wanted to bring up something that some of my families that I'm working with have mentioned to advocate on their behalf. When families go to the DDS website or the .gov website, it's like there's so many words, like everything it's almost like a sea of explanations. And I was wondering, is there like a FAQ page or something where it's like very basic language? Because a lot of my individuals and families, they don't read at typical adult level, so they might want to look there and say, am I, how do I get housing, for example, and then just like a simple language.
That's great. Kevin has many tasks. Kevin Bronson, who's on the call with us tonight, he's my legislative liaison. He's also our communications director, and he oversees the website and social media content. Accessibility is website accessibility is something that's very important, and we've tried to embed some symbols that are more recognizable where we can, but it's hardly universal. And without training on that, they just look like, a web page. It doesn't look like we don't do a good job with that. So yes, we need to improve that. And that's one of the projects on Kevin's list, is to improve that. I will tell you, I heard from somebody who was really trying to find information on the website that it's just simply easier to do it through Google than to do it through the Shannon's nodding. She knows who I'm talking about, than to actually do it through the search bar on our webpage. You have better luck just going to a regular Google search and searching there what you want to find it on our webpage than within our webpage. Kevin, did you want to talk at all about that?
Yeah, I was just going to mention that it's an issue that's the governor and other people have also recognized. It's not just only our website, it's across all of state service. So I can let you know that they have, the state of Connecticut at the bigger level, the IT has reached out to a bunch of agencies, and we are one of them that is starting the transition over to a new, I would argue, more I wouldn't say it's the perfect accessible website, but it's going to be a more accessible website than what we currently have. And during that whole process, it's involving stakeholders and doing some research and making sure the website is more focused for individuals and families, so they can find stuff. So it's realizing the website's not good now and how we need to fix it. So
maybe somebody had mentioned a question earlier about families being able to connect. And of course, you guys wouldn't be able to share any personal information about families who are involved, but maybe this kind of website where we're using simple language could be a place where families could connect with each other and choose to share information with each other. Might be an idea too.
Yeah, I think all of that, as the commissioner said, are great ideas. And I think we have to look at to see what we're able to do, one, with HIPAA laws, but two, also what we're able to do just at the state level, like, you know, what we're able to do there with just creating that, and if there's any restrictions or that sort of stuff through IT.
Thanks,
Thank
Kevin.
you.
So while Kevin was updating more on that, I just scrolled through the chat because I saw something pop up. I have a little ADHD, and anytime these little boxes pop up, I can't help myself but get distracted and then go down the rabbit hole. So question about the way our wait list works, and do you have to be in crisis? The answer is that depends. There are some supports and services that if you were to advocate for, you wouldn't necessarily have to be in an emergency situation. So programs like our community companion home program is something that if you told your case manager you had an interest in now, we would look to make available without you being in crisis first. For those not familiar with that model, it's basically, some states call it adult foster care. We don't want to think about the people we support as being children, so we stay away from that term, but it gives you a good image of what that is. Other people, other states refer to them as host homes. It's in statute as community companion homes. It used to be community training homes. So we'll work to modernize our language, but that's where we match you with someone who's interested in sharing their home and their life experience with someone with intellectual disability. They receive a stipend and other assistance in supporting that individual. One of the things we're looking at both through ARPA and within our own funding is looking at the packages of supports and services offered through CCH to make it easier a little bit on providers, also to break up some of the routine and monotony. I often hear from parents, you know, I don't want them to go live with some other parent. What does that say about me if I can't do it, but some other parent can? A lot of these situations look more like a peer model. They're people closer to age. They may be parents, but not parents of someone as old as their loved one. We have some internal staff and external providers who do a lot of these types of things. And they're licensed, they have oversight. We have eyes on, there's case management involved. We assist with medical, transportation, and other appointments. Things we're looking to do to learn more about to broaden what we're doing there is to see, and we just had some exciting news about our waiver where we can consider technology, including home modification and other things through waivered services. So that's an option that doesn't necessarily mean you might be in crisis. And if the person can live without 24-hour supports right now, there are other types of funding and programs and supports that we would like to talk with you about that may be available ahead of being in crisis. If you are waiting for a group home, there's a couple things that stand in your way today. One, there's a list, and we do triage that, and we consider not just being in crisis, but the age of caregivers, the nature of the challenges that your living situation presents for you or your loved one. There are a variety of factors, but typically if you're just, you know, if they're just coming of age and you are relatively young as a parent, there's a wait for those group homes. The other part of that, and with you know, we talked about workforce stabilization. We do have some existing capacity within our current group homes and other homes that look like group homes but aren't technically group homes. But providers are really struggling to come up with the bodies to staff all those programs, and they've consolidated during COVID and then through workforce crisis. So as they come, as providers, as we help providers try and find ways to become fully staffed, there'll be a little more movement there. And then the elephant in the room tonight, as many of you may already know through your networks, is there is some talk at the legislature about potentially providing some wait list money to or strategies, if not money, to fund the wait list. But we have yet to engage in those conversations and won't fully until after the governor's budget and policy priorities are made public fully in the next couple of weeks. I hope that answers a little bit about the wait list. I used a lot of words there, and I should be mindful of what Cynthia said. So one of the things where we struggle as bureaucrats here in the state is we spit out acronyms and alphabet soup to you, and you're scratching your head. What do I have to? So when I do that, feel free to flag it. There are people helping me tonight in the chat, amazingly defining things and providing links and doing all that. We'll capture the whole chat. And in the email summary, make sure that you have some of this information made available to you following the meeting.
And Commissioner, you did an amazing job of answering that question. I also wanted to highlight that as we look at the system transformation, our hope is that that will open up opportunities for people. We know that as some people may move to more independent settings, that will provide some capacity, especially for individuals that have significant medical needs or care needs or behavioral needs. And so part of this systems transformation is looking at strengthening our capacity to meet those needs. And then you talked eloquently about community companion homes, and I noticed that one of the most passionate people that I know about who can speak about community companion homes is on this call, Joanne Melise. So not to put her on the spot, but Michael did such a nice job talking about supportive housing. Joanne, if you have any words to share on the community companion home matching process and what CCH has to offer, I'd love to hear from you.
Thank you, Elisa. If I can stop video on and off there, sorry about that. Yeah, community companion homes is something that Connecticut has been championing it. It exists in many other states, as the commissioner said. It's pretty much, I think, one of the most natural things for a person to transition from one loving family to another. And I look at it as parents have done a fabulous job of raising their child. And it's nice to have somebody partner with you and to assume some of the caregiving responsibilities, so you can just be a loving family member and no longer have to be the direct caregiver. And it's, when we do it well, it's a partnership. Families are involved in helping us select the home. They share information. They still have their adult child in their life. It's wonderful that they support each other. And this is happening throughout the state of Connecticut. It's growing in Connecticut and in every other state in the country. It's not that somebody else is doing the job that you do. It's they're taking over from you. And it's a natural transition from a child. All of our children, you know, as they become older, they age out and they go and they have their new lives. And so CCH allows them to do that and learn from somebody else while still being a part of your family. So hope that helps a little.
That does. Thank you, Joanne. And as
Anytime.
the commissioner said, there is no waiting list for CCH. If somebody's interested in CCH, that referral can move ahead. Our Pratt teams, and Pratt was defined in the chat, are well aware that interest in CCH, there's no wait for that.
Elisa and Jordan, while we're on the topic of CCH, we do have a question in the chat from Christine Smith. Christine wants to know, can the parent's home become the CCH? For example, can one individual in the current home be the legal guardian and another guardian in the current home become approved for CCH care?
Maybe. So CCH isn't a wage provided, it's a stipend. The expectation in most situations is that while you may be available round the clock, that you're not expected to be on duty round the clock and performing personal care, ready to perform personal care around the clock. There are both federal guidelines for funding as well as some state oversight on the use of paying family members. So we would need to talk about your specific situation to understand it a little better. An alternative that we have struggled to support well in Connecticut is something called shared living. That does involve the individual having rights or ownership or responsibilities for the household, and a caregiver moves in and receives room and board as part of their stipend, as well as some paid staff hours. We are rebooting the way we've done that. It's another example of our efforts to not make things complicated, but making them complicated anyway. And so we need to streamline that. Cress Secaroli, our South Region Regional Director, will be leading our efforts to make that seem easier. So there are some situations where an other individual in the house can be paid for care as long as they are not the guardian or the employer of record. So there's a couple restrictions there. Nationally, there's been some efforts by other states to expand ways in order to compensate caregivers. I think the government is beginning to look like it as a lower cost, more effective approach to care than outplacing individuals to long-term support services like what we offer here in our group homes and other support services. So that has there's some advocacy going on, particularly this is intended to be a West region call. There's some individuals. So you may not know that each region has a regional advisory committee. One of the individuals on the West Region Regional Advisory Committee is really trying to figure out how he can make paid caregivers work better in Connecticut. And Shannon can help you if you wanted to talk to him about what you're looking at. But he's really done a nice job of trying to analyze both the federal landscape on that, as well as take a look at the limitations here in Connecticut. But reach out to us if you have a specific situation you want to address and what that would look like.
I can add the good news as much as at times we can make things complicated. As far as CCH goes, we do have some really very clear materials around the parameters with family members providing CCH services. And I want to note Tim Brazel is on this call. He's the Assistant Regional Director for Private Division, but was formerly the CCH Manager for the West Region. And I know Tim has a wealth of information and can provide specifics if you have a specific scenario you want to think through.
All right, so our next question comes from Beth and Mark Lambert. Beth and Mark would like to know, will DDS continue to support individuals and their agencies that provide work opportunities that pay based on production rather than competitive wages?
So there are currently laws both federally and in the state that make that operation legal. So currently, as long as they are legally operatable, then yeah, we'll continue to do that. There is, again, at both federal and state level, some interest in eliminating what is commonly referred to as, I'll give you two terms, 14C, it's chapter 14C of the Department of Labor Regulations, but sub-minimum wage work or piecemeal work, piece rate work. And advocates who've pushed on the state and on the department, including me, to eliminate those services have heard from me that I take a person-centered approach on all that I do, and that I hear from families that advocate that is a very meaningful, I hear from families and individuals we support that is a very meaningful experience to participate among friends, to be productive, to earn a wage, regardless of the dollar value, but to feel as productive as they can be in a community that's safe. There are advocates and other proponents out there who suggest that that's not an appropriate way, that our self-advocates some of our paid self-advocates might suggest to you that a sub-minimum wage means you're a sub-minimum person and that's dehumanizing. I try and listen to both sides of the argument, but I advocate for both, much in the way that I've advocated for ongoing public services where they are necessary and essential and important to people, because that's something that's part of our continuum of supports, even though there are advocates who would like to see all of our services privatized at some point. Not over 90%, well over 90% of our services are operated in the private sector. But just to give you an example, so there is there are some laws that come into play in that conversation, most notably concerns about seclusion and segregation in non-integrated settings under the ADA. And that is what certain groups of advocates will lean on as to why we should eliminate those supports and services. And to their to support their case, it is true that there has been at times federal rules that prevent or that suggest it should be eliminated, and there are definitely lawsuits brought across the country or settlement agreements brought across the country to eliminate those types of supports and services. And if you're interested about being part of the conversation, that I think it'll be pretty public discourse if there's a continued push to eliminate those supports and services. If my concern and what I have said is they can't take something away, or we can't take something away. We can't take something away without providing something in return. And so what I don't want to do is, for the sake of certain values, sacrifice others. People need a place to go during the day. Parents need to know that there's a safe place where their loved one can be cared for and supported in a meaningful way and have a valuable day. And that doesn't mean for everybody that it will look like a competitive integrated job. So it's a very long-winded answer. I've been at this conversation for over 30 years. I've been on both sides of where I think the right place to land is. And as the commissioner here, my job is to advocate for 17,000 people, and they're no two alike. And I'll continue to advocate for everybody and what's right for them until the law suggests the direction I'm going is not okay. I hope that helps. If you want to follow up on that, I could spend hours on this if you'd like. I don't think anyone really wants to, but it's an important conversation, and no one should be left behind in moving the agency forward.
All right, I did want to make mention that for folks that have questions on CCH, I do see a few of them populated at the bottom of the chat. We're working to get to those. I saw Adriana Ramirez put a very helpful frequently asked questions for CCH link in the chat. You may want to check that out while we're working our way towards the bottom of the chat. Our next question comes from Allison Schwartz. Allison would like to know, I recently returned a family grant check because I couldn't find a provider. Is there an entity you can recommend that maintains and vets such individuals?
Elisa, you want to talk about this and the updated website with regards to efforts to make finding staff easier?
I can. The website is rewardingwork.com. And that's been a website that's been used by families that self-direct or hire their own staff for quite some time. But as part of the ARPA initiative, they recently submitted a proposal that was awarded that will significantly expand that website. It'll have many more features. It'll be easier to use, navigate, and sort for staff that you might be interested in. It's going to take them a little while to ramp up. That contract was just awarded, and so I think it'll probably be a couple months before it's fully in place. There are other resources. Care.com is used quite a bit, and this was a discussion point in our forum yesterday, our self-direction forum, in terms of the different resources that people use. But rewarding work is going to expand greatly, and so that should be a more helpful resource as those new features are added to their platform.
Try toggling my camera on and off. Adriana, I don't want to put you on the spot, but you've been so helpful tonight, and I keep talking about CT Family Support Network. Do you want to talk a little bit about what that is in your role? And I think you may have additional staff on the phone besides yourself tonight. Would you mind just coming on and just talking for a couple minutes so people may be unaware of the work that you do and how we partner?
Sure. Thank you, Commissioner Sharp. So I'm Adriana Ramirez, and I am the statewide Spanish-speaking family support coordinator for Connecticut Family Support Network. I believe on the call as well, we have Lena Esposito, and she is our bilingual support coordinator supporting the Southwest, South Central region. And what we do is we partner with DDS in supporting the community, bringing resources, connecting the community to DDS, and DDS supporting with the community. So we try to be a bridge to bring resources, not only DDS resources, but statewide resources. And we service families through the lifespan with disabilities, general disabilities. So we run workshops and support groups. So we know a lot about different age groups and love working with providers and the families. We support peer mentoring, parent leadership, various things. And we also offer workshops and support groups currently in English and Spanish every month. So you can see us on our social media. We have recordings and we partner a lot with the self-advocates as well. So we enjoy really just helping support our communities.
Thank you. Very much appreciated both the work you do in general and your support on these calls, and the fact that we have access to people who can help us better engage with the Spanish-speaking communities here in Connecticut is really vital. In honor, speaking of which, we also took up an initiative. I don't know exactly when, somewhere just before COVID started, continuing through. But we created a position around diversity, equity, and inclusion, and Dr. Cheryl Ellis is on the call tonight as well. I won't put her on the spot to come on, but I want you to know that it's important to me that everything we do is viewed through the lens of an inclusive community. Disability being foremost in a lot of my conversations, but we want a workforce and an administration that is representative of those we support and their families, and that includes language, color, race, ethnicity, gender, all of what have been traditionally been marginalized communities. We want to those families, those services to work for all. Like I said, all 17,000 or so people eligible for the department. I'm going to do one other shout out. I don't think he was on the call at the beginning, and I'm not sure if he's playing the role of dad or advocate tonight, but Wynn, do you just want to say hi so people can put a face with a name and a little plug for the ARC while you're with us?
Thanks, Jordan. Yeah, it was mostly the role of dad earlier. I'm sorry I was late to the call. I'm Wynn Everts. I'm the executive director of the ARC Connecticut. The ARC Connecticut is an advocacy organization dedicated to protecting the rights of individuals with IDD and also promoting opportunities for their full inclusion in their communities. Our advocacy comes in a bunch of different forms. Connecticut Family Support Network has more horsepower in terms of people. We're a quite small organization, but we've been around for a long time and we've done some pretty constructive things. We're very interested in broadening the array of services. And so it's been wonderful to work with DDS in terms of making that happen.
And one organization that hasn't participated in full, although there may be members on the committee tonight, Shannon Giacovino represents me on that, is the DD Council, which often gets confused for other councils, led by Walter Glom, but with a variety of people involved in the work they do on initiatives that are often broader than just intellectual disability, but include other developmental disability. And another resource for families. He engages routinely with members of our community and a much broader community, as I said, other stakeholders.
Jordan, our next comment or question comes from Deborah Schultz. Deborah wants to know, will any funding be used to provide OT and or PT supports in a daycare setting for adults? She comments, individuals with physical limitations need to have activities modified in order to participate meaningfully and have access to movement activities that are encouraged for other individuals.
So I don't know specifically around ARPA. I certainly understand and recognize the value of those supports. There are certainly day providers around the state who integrate some of that work into their operations, but it is not routine. And so there's some sort of specialized or I would say a lot of our providers find their niche. Some have multiple niches, others are more specific. We try not to label them as medically modeled or behaviorally strong or any of those things. But your case manager may be able to shop that around. I will tell you that I mentioned earlier, Patricia West is on the call. When as commissioner, I look at our public operations as another provider. You know, you have Lark, you have a Star, you have the Waterbury Arc, you have programs and not just ARC's, Ability Beyond and all sorts of other organizations providing services around the state. Our public division is one of those providers. And when Patricia heard about and was part of the team talking about this ARPA initiative, she and her staff rallied to come up with a transformational plan for public to partner going forward with our private providers. We have some of those resources available because of our operations like Lower Fairfield or the Hartford Regional Center. And part of that plan is to potentially make almost clinic-like opportunities for people who are struggling to get access or can find a professional who's just really unfamiliar with the needs of people with intellectual disability, communication, behavior, and other things that make approaching a professional in the community without experience hard. And we have some really good staff. And so at some point that presentation will be ready for prime time. But we have used, for instance, we have a sensory room at Hartford Regional Center, and it's getting a makeover. And I think on my tour of Lower Fairfield just recently, we saw staff working to make a sensory room there. We have the ability, and we have used it for certain situations, to do some OT evals on individuals for sensory and sensory diet issues. It certainly can't be available to everyone we support, and so we sort of gatekeep that at present. But as public continues to shed some of its more typical operations, it looks to specialize in areas where access isn't readily available in the general community, at least till we can build capacity. And I don't mean within providers, clinical capacity in the medical community and such. Patricia, I don't know if you just want to say hi so people can put a face with a name, and if you don't want to, just don't turn on your camera, it's okay. But I think I got that right. Trying to remember the slide deck you presented. Are you still on? I told her I would make her come on, and then I said it anyway. I'm scrolling down the list. Nope, she looks like maybe she left. So she was here. I don't see anybody else from public. So we'll have more about that. One of the we need to increase capacity there. If there are day providers that you know who want to increase capacity and sort of transform the way they're providing day supports and take a more clinical approach or embed and integrate clinical, this would be a great opportunity for providers to suggest through the ARPA funding how they might broaden what they can provide within their day program. But I know it's pretty limited.
So Jordan, we're going to hop back to the CCH topic for a minute. Maria Hines wants to know if CCH models include medically complex cases.
Depending on what you mean by medically complex, the answer is yes, but you know what I'm going to do? Tim, would you mind coming on if you're still there and talking a little bit about the types of things we currently support and what we might be able to support through transformation and increasing what we can do in CCH? Thank you, Tim.
Absolutely. Hello, everyone. I do want to kind of echo Joanne's sentiments that the program is wonderful. It does take out the air traffic control, if you will, out of parenting. But to talk to the acuity as far as medical and behavioral, we do a lot of upfront work to match the individual with the provider. So we do have some limitations, such as if the individual was dependent on insulin and wasn't able to regulate that, and we're making strides to work towards more of a specialized CCH. So we are able to match the person with the existing license. And what's wonderful about this program is if we don't, and they have specific needs, either in the medical or behavioral, we'll do the development and we'll be able to match them appropriately to match their needs. So it's very person-centered, very unique. So again, it's very individual. So we'd have to see the complexities and what we can provide. But we work very closely with the providers. We work very closely with the teams to make those matches. So I would suggest if you are interested, we'd be more than happy to speak on an individual basis. And of course, bring out our clinical teams to do an assessment so that we can make an evaluation for that match.
Thanks, Tim. And in those CCH programs, we continue after placement to provide clinical and case management support and site visits and check-ins with both the family and your family member who's living there, as well as with the provider. You all know that sometimes parenting or providing support can be stressful, and it can be pretty stressful, and you can expect that that's also true with providers. Although I'll tell you, I get much less stress hanging out with kids who aren't mine than I do when I'm hanging out with my own. And that's one of the reasons sometimes it works. My kids know how to push my buttons in only ways that they know how to push. And my buttons don't get pressed the same way by most others. So it's an interesting phenomenon and Joanne's smiling along. I'm sure you've seen it over and over in your body of work, Joanne, that sometimes it's, I hate to say it, but I know it's true of my own kids. There's a family dynamic that sometimes can bring out the worst in everyone, which is why I do Friendsgiving instead of Thanksgiving with my family. It's just it's a more pleasant meal. So with that, Tim, thank you. In the meantime, first of all, congratulations, Tim. I haven't had a chance to say face-to-face to you. Congratulations on your recent appointment.
Thank you.
Are you still, you and Michael still the team in the West for handling CCH inquiries?
That is correct. Yep.
So we'll make sure you have, someone asked how to get a hold of CCH, and Tim right now in the West region is the best path to go, and his partner, his assistant manager, Michael DeGrosse, is still in that capacity as we look to backfill Tim's position.
Commissioner, I see we have a hand up in the queue, Lena Esposito.
Hi, Lena.
Good night, Commissioner. Thank you so much for having me. I'm Lena Esposito with Connecticut Family Support Network. I just want to tell you that thank you so much to create the program for healthy relationship program with the DDS for teens and adults with disability. Then it's been wonderful. It's been going every Tuesday for the past couple of times already, and then thank you so much.
Well, I'm glad that you're able to take advantage of it. So one of the programs or supports that we offer that Lena just mentioned is healthy relationships in partnership with a family planning group in Connecticut, Planned Parenthood, and our self-advocates. We put together a curriculum around healthy relationships, and it's not all about physical intimacy. It's about having healthy relationships socially, trust strangers, but also about how to have mature and adult relationships as well. We offer those on a recurring basis. They're led by our self-advocate coordinators with support. When I was the regional director in the North, and Elisa may have shared the same phenomenon because she came from there as well, I listened to those training groups out. It was literally 15, 20 feet from my door, and they'd be in the evening. Some of the most incredible conversations I've ever eavesdropped in to were these conversations amongst the people we support around relationships, being safe, what they want out of relationships in a way that's very safe and really strongly supported. And those are available to all the individuals eligible for the department. I'm glad people are taking advantage of them. We continue to pledge support to that in an ongoing basis. It's a really, really nifty program. I think that it's geared towards 21 and over. I don't know that we've done one for children, although I'm a former teacher of Our Whole Lives program. and there is some interesting ways to communicate that information to younger people as well. But that's a story for another day. While there are no hands up, I wanted to just mention what we talk about with technology. One of the things we're really looking at is trying to make major use of what we call remote supports. So people who don't need 24-hour care or only have a certain amount of money, and if they spend it all on having meals made and meds passed, they have no time or money, they have no hours left for community integration or whatever that may be. So remote supports is a way that we can, you can afford to have more wraparound supports, not necessarily in your living place, but what it does is it gives you the opportunity to use those supports for outside of your home and not always in your home. But there's other technology. We're in the midst of meeting with a group that's developed, and we think it's valuable within our group home. So when I talk about technology, not replacing what we do, but just assisting with what we do, it's literally a toilet seat, specialized toilet seat that can do pre-diabetes checks through urine. Non-invasive, you don't have to pee in a cup, you don't have to go to the doctor, there's none of that. And some of our individuals really get anxious about, labs and blood draws. Like that's the kind of technology that we're seeing come to the marketplace now that can really benefit. So now instead of doing as many of those types of things, and there's all sorts of technology from very low tech to very high tech, whether it's in speech. And if you haven't, I don't know the last time we did assistive technology forum, Elisa, but I know that we've done them and that they're available on the website. I want people to understand that it's not just robots and it's not just replacing staff and it's not just spying equipment. There's all the amount of things that are out there that can help people lead a more independent life and least restrictive, less invasive. Undergarments that detect moisture so that you don't have to have your pants checked to see if you soiled or urinated during the course of your day. There's a way to be alerted electronically. So instead of doing bed checks every 2 hours for people who need positioning or have skin breakdown issues, there's a way that staff can be alerted to when it occurs instead of being woken up on a schedule. I can only imagine what it would be like to live my life being woken every 2 hours to have someone check my underdrawers, and how invasive that would be, and that there are other ways to provide the same level of care in a less restrictive way. We haven't talked a lot about technology. I do think it's something that's scary, and I get why when we talk about it, but I really want people to start to think about how assistive technology may benefit them in their life.
I
Do we
will
have
add,
any-
we
go
did
for it.
have a forum, assistive technology forum that took place, I think September, if you look on the website, but there's so much information that we're going to hold another assistive technology forum. We just released the schedule through July, and I think assistive technology will be a topic that will continue to provide forums on because there's so much information. I just got some amazing videos today of somebody who has pretty significant physical needs, has cerebral palsy, who just had his home outfitted as a smartphone, and he and his provider sent me a video of him navigating his home and opening the door for himself and turning on the lights, and the excitement was incredible. And we've got to share those stories because it's amazing how we've used the word transformational a lot. But when you can do things that you've never been able to do, it's pretty exciting. And so we also hope to have a technology fair, I think in late spring, and that will have a wealth of information about various innovations in assistive technology. So more to come on that as well.
I just read today, am I unmuted? I just read today, unrelated to our body of work, but I'm sure it's something that may play a role going forward, about an individual, I don't remember if it was ALS or Parkinson's, who with medical intervention, having lost speech, was able to both speak and read at a rate of 60 words per minute, having had no none of that available to them prior. And I'll try and dig up that article for our assistive technology team, Elisa. But when I tell you a lot of the technology that we're bringing to what we do, the funding for it, as you know, there's not always a lot of people working on our behalf, but the funding for it comes out of the aging community. And we talked earlier about this workforce crisis in independent settings. The population, the part of the workforce crisis is a tipping in population. In that there will come a time where more people are needing supports than there are caregivers. And this was noted by those in the aging community many years ago, and that being able to support people safely at home through use of technology may be one way to stave off part of this crisis, where we can't always provide care in the manner that we wish to. And so we have become big benefactors of that. We do partner with aging and disability services in the state, and there are tech access centers available. I think there's 7 statewide. And I don't know if I'm not sure where in the West region is the closest one. I know that Middletown is the Arc of Meriden Wallingford has a robust place, but there are others. Who do you contact was one of the questions. And we keep saying, I promise you, we're going to capture that chat. We need to get you information on Tim Brazil's email address and Michael's email address on CCH. We need to give you the West Region contact on assistive technology. And rather than say them all to you and you feverishly write down information and worry about spelling and where the period goes and the @ symbol, we'll make sure that we get that to you following the meeting tonight. So if we
I have
mention
been
it-
providing some direct resources
Oh,
just
great.
when people ask individually.
Thank you, Elisa. I appreciate that. What else we got tonight? Oh, something new in the chat, Donor?
So I don't know if this was previously answered. Before we move off the topic of assistive technology, Pamela Lyman wants to know, or it's rather a comment. She says, hoping assistive technology includes extensive medication requirements and seizure support.
All right, I didn't process that well. I'm going to read it myself. So extensive medication requirements and seizure support. So there's a variety of things, and I have become intimately involved in the world of seizures in the last year and a half, and I learn more and more about that all the time. Wynn may have some expertise in that area too, as with some lived experience in what it is like to live in and around a world filled with seizures. And we're happy to be of resource. I know Wynn well enough to put words in his mouth. If we can help you in your particular situation, we would like to. The technology around medication, there's a bunch of it, including monitors and the ways that your Fitbits and those types of things. MedMinders is probably the highest utilized technology we have, and those are pill dispensers that sit on the counter who pour your pills and alert you when it is time to take them. And then if you don't, alert somebody else so that you can have physical assistance in being reminded there. And around seizures, there's advances all the time. You should know that our IRB has done some looks at the use of medical marijuana, which has had success for intractable or uncontrollable seizures for certain populations. I'm not a doctor. I'm not recommending it. It's just another option out there for some. And there are increasingly adept animals, and we don't yet cover assistive pets. But there are a couple different critters out there, dogs, and I think there's one other that are able to be trained to set to notice aura or changes prior to a seizure, and then the dog or the other animal, I think it's actually a pig, but I could be wrong, can assist you with being guided to a place to sit, so that if you have drop seizures, grand mal seizures, you are less at risk for bonking your head or anything else on the way to the ground. But I'm not an expert on this. I'm just doing a deep dive on my own. It's something we can follow up on more. Did you have a specific question on seizure and medication support?
Thank you. Well, my son has seizures and epilepsy, obviously, and autism and a bunch of different things. So his medications are extensive. And I think that my son could actually live on his own if he had that right support. So I'm really interested in how long-term I could support him from being able to get his medication and take his medication, having some kind of alerts for seizures. Those type of things are actually my biggest concerns.
So Pamela, we could, as I mentioned at the beginning of the conversation tonight, around some of those specifics, we, the department, would love to have a conversation with you about that. Just as an FYI, my daughter's seizures are non-epileptic, which makes treating them, there's no medication available for them, which makes supporting her and her needs very different than people with epilepsy. But there's a lot of folks with epilepsy who are not well controlled or responsive to the medications. And as you are probably painfully aware, some of those medications can be caustic or have side effects.
Sure.
In all sorts of ways. So really happy to try and talk that through. The notion of having to live in a 24/7 situation with people who potentially aren't best matches for you simply to manage a health condition is something that I would imagine for you said son, that would be, feel compromised. I really like to talk about how we can help you and him find a way to live as independently and least restrictive as possible, particularly if the primary issues are around that. So let's talk more offline. I have a personal interest in trying to understand his needs better and how we might support them.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
I really appreciate you speaking up. And again, Win knows what you're talking about. And also it has more years experience than I do with it. I'm sure he would be an open book for you as well as to what he and his family are doing.
Yes, please reach out. I put my email in the chat earlier. I have a 32-year-old son that has been having seizures since he was 2. And I'd be happy to share what I've learned with anybody.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Luckily, his seem to be under control at the moment, but I've thought that in the past. So unfortunately, you never know what tomorrow's going to be. So thank you.
Yeah, Win was a support to me as I was going through this, because I went from a pretty relaxed, laid back, hippie sort of parent to someone who had to be hyper vigilant 24/7 in a matter of a day. And it was a big change for me and dramatic for us as a family. And Win has been a great sounding board for me the last year and a half.
Thank you both.
Lena?
Yes, Commissioner, I have a question. It's about the service dog. There are different kinds of service dog, like companion dog, stress dog. There are like 4 or 5 already. Then if a dog is a companion dog, can the parent request to be with the child at the group home or residential, or it has to be service dog, or it has to be special training?
So there is a very specific ADA accommodation that limits the animals that can be certified and the type of paperwork that's required, in what situations they can and can't be refused access. And I don't know it off the top of my head, Lena, and I really only learned about this recently when someone was trying to gain access to a local high school basketball game with a service animal, but it wasn't a registered service animal and didn't have paperwork, and there was a bit of discussion. So we can try and find out more about that, and our friends coordinating ADA across the state may have some answers to that. I think for the most part under ADA, reasonable accommodations are expected. So we'd have to understand the specific situation better and the types of support that dog or other animal provides. I know recently the FAA has come down on who can fly with what types of pets, as there had been sort of broadening of the types of animals. Certainly for blind and deaf services, I know that is approved in lots of settings, but as I said, they're now being certified for therapy and for seizure alertness, and there's a couple other things in that area with that they're training canines and others for. So we can find out more, but it's a great question.
Commissioner, I did want to get to a question from Beth and Mark Lambert. Beth and Mark are wondering if there's currently anyone within the state of Connecticut looking at continuing to offer 14C jobs.
So I talked a little bit about this earlier. With intention and due to federal changes for us, the number of 14C opportunities in the state has shrunk markedly in the last 10 years. A lot. And so there's fewer and fewer, and there are several organizations that currently provide them who are of their own volition moving out of them. I'm going to talk about a couple ways that I think are some things that we can talk about. You know, there are considerations. We intentionally eliminated sheltered workshops as a covered service under the waiver, and our plan to transition out of those was slowed. We came up with some time-limited services, transitional services, pre-vocational services. And so we do know who those providers are that still offer it. We don't have any guarantees how long they'll continue to offer it and what direction that may go. But if you reach out to your case manager, there's ways to do that. I know in the West region, Kennedy Collective, Kennedy Center has done a lot of work on social enterprises and entrepreneurship as an alternative to 14C subminimum wage work. We have done some grants directly through ID partnership money, funding we get from the state to explore business building. My roots in vocational work started a long time ago in Belchertown and Hadley, Mass, where I operated a cooperative. No one got paid a wage. They were business owners and they profit shared. Whether or not they made a lot of money or lost a lot of money was up to the way we operated the business. They subcontracted, they paid the agency I worked for as a consultant, $1 a year as a consultant fee to help them run the business. But the only people who were owners of the business were people with intellectual disability. And then we shared profits with them on a bi-weekly basis from the money that we made. So there's all, then this is what I mean when I say we're not here to take anything away unless we have something to replace it with. And this is where there, you know, the more minds we have together on the way we solve that. But for now, Elisa, you have your hand up. I'm assuming you have some comments on accessing those types of things. If it's your loved one and they are young and transitioning, we'd really like to talk to you about alternatives and what that may look like, as opposed to entering into 14C work now, only because, you know, as I said, there's conversation federally and statewide around elimination of that. It will be a phased out approach if and when it is ever phased out. We won't just close the doors on those, but providers have sensed and know that this is the direction that it's headed federally. I have my own personal beliefs about it that run contrary to some of the national dialogue. I've shared with Shannon a little bit of that, some of my opining through email about the federal anti-work movement and the American dream of getting a job to work 40 hours a week for 50 years so you can enjoy 5 years of retirement before you die. Doesn't seem like much of a dream to me. So I wonder about that objective and whether or not we should be value projecting to people that that's the best life. And I question that for myself at this point in my career, if I've done that right, but I've lived the American dream. I work 40 hours a week since I'm 16. It seems to be what I was supposed to do. I'm sorry, getting a little off track. Lisa, why don't you take over before I ramble further? But it's a conversation I'm really passionate about.
I think, and you, I think did a great job of explaining where things are with the 14C. I just wanted to mention, going back to ARPA and the various initiatives we do have something called customized employment, and it's designed for people who have not been successful in employment but are interested in employment. And there is funding for this. It doesn't come from your regular allocation, your day funding. This is additional funding that's available. So if somebody wants to work, or they worked in a 14C sub-minimum wage setting, but they're interested in something additional in by way of employment, competitive employment, this customized employment really is designed for people who have an interest, but they haven't been able to obtain employment, competitive employment. We've been training up agencies around the state, and one of the big questions was, you know, is there funding for this? Does this come out of my current allocation? And the answer is there is funding for this, and it doesn't come out of your current allocation. So if that's something that you're interested in, Adriana, you're wonderful. Thank you. Adriana has dropped in the chat a little bit of information on customized employment, and we would love to hear from you.
Yes, Adriana is in fuego tonight. The what you just talked about leads to a question in the chat about funding. Our funding structure, you know, fits the mold of Connecticut. It's very, very complex, intricate, and not easily understood. And I will do a disservice trying to explain it in full in under 5 minutes. We use as a guide, not a rule, the level of need assessment tool. We refer to it as a LON. If you don't have a case manager assigned, then you may not have had a LON done, a level of need tool done. There's work within ARPA to consider another tool used in the state for CFC, Community First Choice programs, and others, called the Universal Assessment. It doesn't divide things up exactly as we do, and so we want to make sure, as I've said before, we leave no one behind. And any progress forward can't mean we leave people behind. So based on that LON and the particular types of supports and services you may want, there is a guide to what that funding is. Some people need less than what we might allocate. Some need more than the LON tool would indicate, and we have, I won't give you more alphabet soup because it doesn't matter to you. It's an internal process, but we have ways to review as a group those requests for people who need more than what the LON would attribute for funding as a guide. And we work with families who underutilize their allocation. And believe it or not, there are a lot of people who don't use everything we get. We redistribute that. It's not that we hold on to it. When there's a lack of, the word we use is utilization of those funds, we use levers within the system to try and shift that funding. We overcommit dollars every year, knowing that not every dollar will be used through the way we portion it out. So it's different for day in the day model. It's different for res in each of the res models. But ultimately, what guides your supports and services is your individual plan. And what we fund based on a team approach within our cost guidelines is done through that planning process and how we help individuals lead their best life. And so that's the guide. And when the funding doesn't fit the plan, we take a look at the plan and the funding, and we figure out how we help someone lead their best life anyway, and what we can do either through increasing financial supports or finding alternative supports. That's a very basic, non-complex description of our funding. Happy to answer a specific question or email me directly if you want to talk more. Some of you on the call have emailed me before, and you know that I'm responsive. When I tell you to email me, I actually read them all and respond to most, or find or refer you to the person who can help you better. I don't know everything about our system, and so as you've seen me tonight, I've pointed to Shannon or Tim or the other Shannon who's on the call, who would love that I didn't make her turn on her camera and talk right now. Our regional director in the West. It's been a long day in the West, and others on the call. We'll find you the right resource. And sometimes that means looking outside the organization, and we point to CTFSN, Connecticut Family Support Network, or the ARC, or I'll ask you to speak to Shannon Jacobino in the ombudsperson's office, or to talk to your local provider. My email is my name, Jordan, JORDAN.chef at ct.gov, and Gunnar or Kevin's going to drop that in the chat right now because I said it fast. There aren't additional questions in the chat right now. I know for me, it's been a long day. I know that if you're a caregiver, it's also been a long day for you and getting close to the witching hour. So I'm going to try and wrap things up here. First, let me say thank you. Finding a way to take time out of your life, given the demands on you, to spend time with me and my team to help move the system forward, to help increase opportunities for everybody eligible for the department is tremendous and generous on your part. And I thank you for the generosity of your time and your willingness to speak with us tonight. In a very heartfelt thank you to my staff, who I started talking to at 8 o'clock this morning, who are still on the call with me now at 8 o'clock at night, to the providers who wanted to listen in because they are committed to the mission, and the other advocates. This is a rare, as I said at the beginning, we really want to try and flex. We want to push the boundaries. We've for so long tried to fit round pegs in square holes because that's what the waiver says, or that's what the feds say, or that, I'm an ambassador for the Charting the Life Course curriculum, which is the planning tool that governs and directs our person-centered plan now. And one of the things I learned in that from people out of the University of Kansas City, who through federal funding promote this person-centered planning approach, is that people within a system, when challenged with a problem, point back to the system for the solution. What I've challenged my staff to do, what I've challenged our providers to do, and what I'm challenging you to do is to look outside the system. What is it we're missing? If it was a perfect system, I wouldn't hear complaints. I wouldn't hear that there aren't people getting services. I wouldn't hear that the funding isn't right. So it's obviously not perfect, and I'm not here to suggest it is, but I need you to help make it better. And let me also say this, because it came up on a prior family call. I know what it's like to be in your shoes, not as long as you've been, but I know what it's like. And I know that you're tired. And if fighting for change, if trying to invent the next generation of services, if trying to broaden our continuous supports is just beyond where you can spend your energy and your time, you're in a group of people who are going to work on that on your behalf, and you don't have to do it. And if what you want and what you really need is our traditional model of services, they will be there at some point for you, but you may be waiting. And in the meantime, we're not going to rest. We're going to continue to try and push and innovate and create opportunities for as many as we can. The governor asked me last week or 2 weeks ago, he said, "Why are you always smiling?" And I said, "I get to wake up every day and say, how do I make the lives of people I support better?" Best job I've ever had. So it's great. I wake up smiling every day to face that. So I challenge you now. You can tell I'm heartfelt about this. I'm not a political hack. This is all I've done since I got out of high school. I don't know any different. And I've said this on the previous call, so if you watch other recordings, you're going to hear it and it's going to sound campy and corny, but I mean it. If not now, with this opportunity, if not now, then when? And if not you, then who? I need you and I want to help you. So we'll do this together. Thanks, everybody. You have a great night.